Hi, I'm Marlene. I was temporarily blind after a fall, and while I couldn't see, I heard everything. That's when I learned my son's girlfriend called me excess baggage. Not behind my back, right in my own kitchen. They thought I couldn't hear. They thought I was just in the way. But what hurts more than the insult was realizing I was being slowly written out of their plans, their house, their lives. A discarded gift, a contract with my name erased, a wedding I helped fund but wasn't welcome at. So I did what any mother would do when silence became a weapon. Want to know what I did next? I was sitting in my living room that evening, tucked under the beige quilt I had sewn myself years ago. The late sun outside was filtering in through the blinds, catching on the dust motes as they danced quietly in the stillness. My sight was still hazy. 2 weeks had passed since the fall that left me temporarily blind, but my hearing was as sharp as ever, and that night, I heard everything I wasn't supposed to. Lennox and Vera were in the kitchen. They must have thought the sound of the kettle boiling would muffle their voices, but their words carried. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just existing in my home. That's the worst part. When you no longer feel like you belong in a place you once built from the ground up. Their laughter floated in first, casual, familiar. Then came Vera's voice, smooth like silk, but colder than winter in Amarillo. "It's like dragging excess baggage everywhere," she said. There was a pause. I expected Lennox to say something, anything, to correct her, to defend me. But he didn't. He didn't say a damn word. I felt the words hit me like a chair pulled out from under me mid-sentence. Excess baggage. Was that what I had become? A thing to be dragged? I sat motionless, my hands resting on the arms of the recliner, gripping the worn fabric tighter than I realized. My throat burned, but I refused to clear it. If I made a sound, they'd know I heard them, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Vera's voice again, lighter now, like it was nothing. She doesn't even notice. Poor thing probably thinks we're doing her a favor. I counted to 10 in my head. I've lived through storms and silences, wars in my marriage, and years of raising Lennox on my own after his father left. But nothing ever hit quite like your own child letting someone reduce you to dead weight, and standing there, doing nothing about it. Lennox shifted the conversation, something about catering options. Vera giggled and asked if gluten-free was even necessary. My fingers curled into fists beneath the blanket. I sat there through the entire exchange, not flinching, not breathing heavy, not letting them know what they'd just done to me. That night, I lay in bed longer than usual. The room was quiet, and the lamp cast a warm glow against the wall. My body was tired, but my mind wouldn't settle. I kept hearing her words over and over. Excess baggage. My own son, standing beside her, silent. He used to come running into my arms after school, his small fingers gripping my hair as if I were the only safe place in the world. I remembered holding his hand during his first ER visit when he broke his collarbone falling off his bike. I remembered missing meals to pay for his soccer cleats. I remembered being his anchor. Now, apparently, I was just something to be dragged along until it became inconvenient. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears sat in the corners of my eyes, but they didn't fall. I wasn't going to give them that moment, even in the privacy of my own room. As I stared into the dark, my thoughts turned. This wasn't just about Vera's cruelty. It was about Lennox's silence. That silence spoke volumes, louder than any insult she could have flung. He didn't stop her. He didn't defend me. That was the betrayal. Morning would come soon, and with it, another day of pretending. That was the role assigned to mothers like me. Smile, stay useful, don't make things uncomfortable. But deep inside, something was beginning to shift. A quiet line had been crossed, and the woman they thought would take it lying down? She was about to stand up. I sat at my vanity, fixing the clasp on a necklace I hadn't worn in years. The chain caught for a second, trembling like my fingers. 2 days had passed since I overheard Vera's voice slice through my dignity, and still I hadn't told Lennox what I'd heard. That wasn't weakness. That was strategy. I needed to see it all, not just hear it. The invitation said cocktail attire. I wore navy, simple, elegant, safe. Not that anyone was looking to be impressed by the mother of the groom these days. When we arrived at the venue in Houston, the sun had just slipped behind the skyline, and the brick walls of the building were lit up with soft gold. Inside, the chatter rose like static. Smiles, laughter, polished shoes clacking over marble floors. Vera greeted me with a hug, too light to mean anything. "You look lovely, Marlene," she said, already halfway turned to wave at a guest. Lennox was busy with introductions, handshakes, nods, forgetting to look back. I scanned the room for familiar faces, cousins I hadn't seen in years, old family friends, but none of them came to me. They were busy, as people often are when they've rehearsed a story where you're not included. I started searching for my seat. I wasn't expecting center stage, but I thought perhaps a chair near family. I moved past a table labeled bride's immediate family, then another, groom's siblings. Finally, in a quiet corner near the doors, a card caught my eye. +1 of groom's party. My name wasn't even printed. I stood there a moment, blinking. Then I took the seat. From there, I watched Lennox laughing with his future in-laws, watched Vera float from table to table like a swan in a rented pond. No one noticed me. No one stopped by. No one said my name. Dinner came. Toasts were raised. First, Vera's father, a heartfelt speech about the beauty of commitment. Then her mother, recalling Vera's childhood with a tearful pride that I couldn't fake even if I wanted to. Then came Vera herself. She spoke about unity, about honoring those who raised us. She thanked her parents for teaching her grace, even brought up her childhood dog, Max, and how he taught her unconditional love. People laughed. They wiped their eyes. Lennox stood next, his voice strong, his hand gently squeezing Vera's. "To the woman who makes every day brighter," he said, "and to the future we're building together." His eyes swept the room. "To new beginnings." That was it. Not a single mention of me. Not a thank you for raising him, for keeping the roof over our heads when his father bailed. Not even a nod. I didn't leave. I sat there, sipping my water, watching as the camera crew moved from table to table, never once pointing their lens in my direction. I adjusted the napkin on my lap, not because it was out of place, but because it gave me something to do with my hands. No one asked me to dance. No one saved me a slice of cake. I waited until the speeches ended, until the music rose and swallowed the room in celebration. Then I stood, slowly, legs a little stiff, pride a little shattered. I looked around once more, at the tables I wasn't invited to, the conversations I wasn't part of, the life I had built now hosting a party I wasn't really in. I sat there like a stranger, in the house I helped build. They don't know it yet, but I just opened a door they won't be able to close. That sentence lived in my chest for days after the engagement party, ringing louder than any toast or round of applause from that evening. I returned to my small routines, watering the succulents by the kitchen window, reorganizing the recipe clippings I hadn't used in years, flipping channels until the news became too bleak to bear. But nothing felt steady anymore. My home still smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood, but it didn't feel like mine. Not since Vera started dropping by like she owned it. Lennox hadn't called, not once. No, "How are you, Mom?" Not even a lazy text. Just silence. That was the loudest part. The week after the party, Vera stopped by in a cloud of lavender perfume and polished self-assurance. "Brought over a few decorations we forgot," she said, setting a cardboard box by the kitchen table without asking if I needed help. "Hope it wasn't too overwhelming for you last weekend." I smiled politely. "I managed." She pulled out her phone to take a call and left it on the table as she stepped into the hallway, her voice muffled just beyond view. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up on its own. A notification banner slid across. Voice memo, plan, March. I didn't touch it. Not right away. I stared at it for a long time, hearing Vera's voice trailing off somewhere near the guest bathroom. Then I tapped it. The recording started with laughter, hers and another woman's. Their tone was light, careless, the kind of careless that only shows up when people forget there might be consequences. "I swear," the other voice said, "if I had to share a hallway with my future mother-in-law for another year, I'd fake a heart attack." More laughter. Then Vera's voice, clear as a bell. "Oh, she'll be safer in a facility anyway. Less risk of falling again, right? Lennox just needs a little push. He doesn't like conflict." "Once she's out," she continued, "we can finally have the space to build our home, our life. No guilt hanging over the dinner table." My breath caught, and then the kicker. "It's like baggage claim," Vera said, "except the bag never comes back." They laughed again. I didn't. I paused the recording, placed the phone exactly where she had left it, and sat back in my chair. I didn't move for a long time. When Vera returned, she didn't notice a thing. She waved goodbye with the same glossy smile she always wore and stepped out into the fading light like she hadn't just gutted someone in her own words. I made myself a cup of tea. My hands shook as I poured the water, but I didn't spill. I carried the mug to the window and stared out at the dusk settling over Pearland. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't comfort. It exposed. I replayed the memo. Once, then again. Each time it carved a little deeper. She had plans. They all did. And I wasn't in them. Not really. I was an inconvenience, something to be handled, tucked away, institutionalized, disposed of under the softest guise of concern. Not forgotten, planned against. That was the part that broke something inside me. I saved the recording to a folder on my computer, labeled it something generic, March Notes, and backed it up to a USB drive. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but instinct told me I would need it soon. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I just sat in my chair by the window, holding the tea that had gone cold hours earlier. Somewhere deep in the house, a floorboard creaked under its own weight. I wasn't just forgotten, I was planned against. They don't know it yet, but I just opened a door they won't be able to close. You gave me silence. Now I'll give you memory. Let's see who wins. 3 days after discovering the voice memo, I sat with a lukewarm cup of coffee and opened Facebook. Habit, I guess. When your world starts unraveling quietly, sometimes you reach for noise that doesn't scream. There it was, Vera's latest post. A photo of the engagement party cropped neatly. She stood in the middle, beaming, surrounded by friends and family. Not me. I wasn't in the frame. Wasn't in the caption either. She wrote, "Grateful for the incredible support of my future family, and to all the mothers out there who taught us how to love. Thank you for your strength." Strength. I read it twice, then a third time. Each word felt like a rehearsed line from a play I wasn't cast in. The comments rolled in quickly, clapping hands, heart emojis, old classmates chiming in with, "You're so lucky," and "What a beautiful moment." A few people even tagged Vera's mom. I recognized the name. I didn't see a single mention of mine. This wasn't a slip. It wasn't carelessness. It was curated. Every sentence, every angle of that photo, crafted to build a narrative where I didn't exist. I didn't comment. I didn't even sigh. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Truth and dropped the file in. Later that evening, my phone rang. Dolores. We hadn't spoken much in the last few months. Life had a way of scattering people like leaves. But I'd seen her at the engagement party. She sat 2 tables behind mine. "Hey, I wasn't sure if I should say anything," she began, her voice unusually hesitant. "But I heard something that's been eating at me." I straightened up. "Go ahead." At the party, I stepped into the ladies' room, and I heard Vera talking to someone, a friend maybe. She was laughing. "Laughing?" I asked, though I already felt my stomach turn. She said something like, Once she's out, we'll finally breathe in that house. Then she said, she doesn't even know what's coming. And they both laughed, loud. My hand gripped the phone tighter. She meant you, Marlene. I didn't want to believe it, but I recognized the voice. Dolores went quiet. I could hear the unease in her breath. Thank you, I finally said, for telling me. We talked a few more minutes about mundane things, groceries, doctor visits, her granddaughter's dance recital. Then we hung up. I sat back in my chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, letting the silence stretch. It wasn't just a recording anymore. I had a second confirmation. Different moment, same intention, same woman. I saved another file, titled it Dolores Testimony.txt, and backed it up with the rest. I knew where this was going. I didn't know when, but I knew I'd need every receipt, every shred of digital dishonesty to reconstruct the truth they tried to bury. I wasn't rushing toward revenge. I wasn't screaming in hallways. I was documenting. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. I could hear Vera's voice playing over and over in my head, not from a speaker this time, but lodged somewhere between my spine and memory. I opened the USB drive, checked the files one more time, then labeled the outside with a single word in permanent marker, memory. They had chosen silence for me. They had chosen to edit me out of rooms, photos, posts, and plans. But I had chosen to remember. They forgot I was a lawyer before I was a mother. That was their first mistake. It started the following morning, when I was straightening up the living room. Lennox and Vera had left in a rush earlier. Brunch plans, or so Vera had tossed over her shoulder. I picked up stray napkins, wiped the counter, folded the throw blanket, the usual small attempts to claim order. That's when I noticed the envelope. It was thick, manila, partially slid beneath a stack of wedding magazines on Lennox's desk. The label was typed, clean, deliberate. It read, Revised Property Agreement. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The document was professionally prepared, notarized. My name, once listed clearly beside Lennox's as co-owner of the house, was gone. Vanished like a memory no one wants to admit existed. There was no line for my signature, no mention of my contribution, no reference to the years I paid half the mortgage, the original down payment I pulled from my retirement fund when Lennox couldn't qualify a loan. The date on the contract? 2 weeks prior, just after the engagement party. I sat down slowly, letting the paper rest in my lap. I read every line, every clause. It wasn't just about ownership. It was a complete transfer of legal claim, repositioning the house as solely belonging to Lennox and Vera once they were married. All without a word to me. I wasn't confused. I wasn't surprised. I was furious. Later that afternoon, when Lennox returned alone to grab something he forgot, I waited in the kitchen with the contract folded neatly beside my coffee. You changed the deed, I said, without raising my voice. He froze mid-step. Mom, it's not what it looks like. No? I turned the paper toward him. Because it looks like you erased me. He fumbled. Vera thought it would be simpler this way, legally. With the wedding coming, it made sense. I leaned back, still calm. And did you think it made sense? He hesitated. I didn't know how to bring it up. Because you knew it was wrong. He looked down. I could hear his breathing quicken. You live in a house I helped you keep, I said. When the market crashed and you almost lost it, who saved it? When your job was furloughed, who covered your mortgage for 6 months? He didn't speak. I did, quietly, without paperwork, because I trusted you. He looked like a boy again, stiff, ashamed, nowhere to hide. This document doesn't just change the deed. It rewrites history. It says I never existed in the story of this home. He opened his mouth, but I cut in. And don't tell me Vera did this. You signed it. Silence. Did she tell you not to tell me? Still nothing. I see, I said. So silence is your defense now. I stood, gathered the document, and walked it back to my room. I didn't slam the door. That's not my style. Instead, I took out an old file box, the kind I hadn't used since I left my last legal case. I placed the contract inside, next to my receipts, tax forms, and the original co-ownership agreement that bore my name and my money. Then I added a note, to be revisited. They thought I'd fade quietly, that I'd be too polite to question, too loyal to protect myself. But I remembered everything, and I had the proof. I folded the original contract and placed it in my filing cabinet, locking it with the tiny brass key I kept on my necklace. They forgot I was a lawyer before I was a mother. That was their first mistake. Sometimes the truth doesn't need volume, just presence. The next Saturday, while the world spun in spring warmth outside, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a notepad at my side. The words came easy, not from emotion, but from memory. I typed out each payment, each date, each favor I'd never asked to be remembered for. Mortgage checks, property taxes. The day I wrote Lennox's loan cosign in blue ink with a trembling hand. Every line documented. Every penny matched with a receipt. I wasn't doing this to argue. I was building a record. Once the letter was done, I printed 2 copies. One to keep, one to deliver. I tucked them in a white envelope along with the original co-ownership deed that still bore my name. Then I took a Sharpie and wrote on the front, fax. By mid-afternoon, I slid the envelope beneath Lennox and Vera's bedroom door. They were out running errands, or maybe off making plans for a future that didn't include me. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock in the hallway and the faint hum of the air conditioning kicking on. I didn't wait long. Lennox found me in the kitchen before dinner, holding the envelope, looking like a boy who'd just broken his mother's favorite dish. His voice trembled. "Why would you do this?" I didn't look up from peeling the potatoes. "You mean tell the truth?" He hesitated. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Lennox?" I turned to face him fully. "You live in a house I helped you save from foreclosure. A house I walked through when the paint still smelled fresh, and you hadn't figured out how to assemble the crib yet. And now, I'm not even listed as someone who ever existed here." He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised a hand. "I'm not threatening, I'm reminding." Vera came in then, grocery bag swinging from one arm. She glanced at the papers and rolled her eyes. "I told him not to stress you with the legal stuff. It's just formality." I stepped closer. "You don't rewrite history just because it doesn't match your decor." Vera's mouth tightened. Lennox stood frozen. "You think this house is yours now?" I continued. "Because you erased my name on a form? Because you post online and host brunches and speak in soft tones that make you sound composed? Let me tell you something. This house wasn't built with paint swatches and hors d'oeuvres. It was built with sacrifice, with jobs I didn't want, with dinners skipped, with me holding it all together while everyone else figured themselves out." They didn't respond. I didn't need them to. I walked over to the counter, picked up my tea, took a sip, and let the silence stretch. "I'm not here to fight. I've done enough of that in my life, but I won't be brushed aside." Vera crossed her arms. "This is getting dramatic." "No," I said calmly. "This is getting honest." I looked at Lennox again. "If I leave this house, I do it with dignity, but not because you pushed me, because I opened the door myself." Neither of them stopped me as I walked past. I stepped out to the back garden and sat on the bench I stained myself 10 summers ago. The roses I planted last March were blooming, unaware of the human fractures blooming inside that house. I closed my eyes, let the breeze move over me, and whispered to the wind. Sometimes the truth doesn't need volume, just presence. The next morning began like many others. Quiet, slow, with the hum of a Sunday settling into the walls. Lennox and Vera had hosted a brunch the day before. I kept to myself mostly, clearing dishes, wiping countertops, stepping around people who barely acknowledged me. That was fine. I had long accepted my invisibility in that space. I offered to help clean up. Vera smiled politely and gestured toward the kitchen as though I were part of the hired staff. Whatever you can do would be great, Marlene. Outside, the garbage bins lined the driveway, overflowing with paper napkins, plastic champagne flutes, and the remnants of celebration. I lifted one of the bags, and the bottom corner gave out slightly, spilling a small jewelry box onto the concrete. I knew it before I picked it up. The cream-colored satin box still had the tiny gold sticker from the jeweler. I opened it slowly. The bracelet I'd spent weeks choosing, engraved with Vera's initials and the date of their engagement, was still sealed in its plastic wrapping. Untouched, unworn, unwanted. I stood there holding it, the sunlight washing over me like something acidic. Then I placed it gently back in the box, folded the flaps of the garbage bag, and walked back inside. I didn't mention it. I didn't ask questions. Instead, I placed the box on the kitchen counter next to a half-drunk glass of orange juice. Vera came in a few minutes later, phone in hand, mid-laugh, only to pause at the sight of the box. "Oh," she said casually. "I didn't like gold. Thought it was too old-fashioned." I stared at her. "You don't get to call that a preference." That was a message. Lennox appeared behind her, carrying a stack of plates. He saw the box, saw my face, and said nothing. Just nothing. The silence hit harder than her words. She shrugged and turned away, humming as she scrolled through her phone. I walked out of the room. By mid-afternoon, Vera and Lennox were in the living room with their wedding planner, swatches and notebooks spread across the coffee table. I paused at the doorway, watching them laugh about floral arrangements, color schemes, head table placement. "I was thinking we keep the head table intimate," Vera said. "Just us, the maid of honor, best man." I stepped in. "Have you finalized the seating? I might be able to help." Vera didn't even look up. "We've got this, Marlene. You don't need to worry yourself." Lennox gave me a quick glance, but said nothing. Then Vera added, soft and sugar-laced, "This isn't about the past. It's about moving forward." I nodded, noted every word. Later that evening, I sat at my dresser, the one I'd brought with me from my first apartment. The mirror was slightly warped at the edge from years of cleaning with the wrong cloth. It showed the world as it was, slightly distorted, a little too honest. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that for one lifetime. I folded the bracelet box in tissue paper and placed it beside a note. Nothing dramatic, just a sentence. This was the moment I knew I wasn't being included. I was being erased. Then I stood, smoothed the blanket at the foot of my bed, and turned off the lamp. They'd said enough. I'd speak in actions now. They'd said enough. I'd speak in actions now. By the second morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. No more silent nods. No more sitting at the edge of someone else's table. I opened my laptop, pulled up every screenshot, every saved message, every file I had compiled with the kind of attention only a woman betrayed can manage. The fake tributes Vera had posted, the voice memo where she laughed about sending me away, and of course, the photo I took of the bracelet, still sealed, tossed in the trash. I crafted the message with precision. No dramatics, no accusations, just proof. The group chat included Vera's extended family, people who smiled at me with soft eyes and clutched my hands in fake warmth at the engagement party. Now they would see what those smiles were hiding. I attached the files, wrote 2 sentences. Truth doesn't need a spotlight, just daylight. And I pressed send. I closed my phone, set it on the kitchen table, and waited. It didn't take long. Vera's voice cracked through the house before I heard her steps. "You made me look like a monster." I didn't stand. I stirred my tea. "Calm." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "I just showed them your mirror." Lennox walked in behind her, confused. "What's going on?" "She humiliated me," Vera snapped. "She's trying to ruin everything." Lennox glanced at me, unsure. I stayed seated. "Your fiancé had plans," I said. "None of them included me. And now everyone knows." Vera turned on him. "You're just going to let her attack me like this?" He opened his mouth but said nothing. I stood then, slow and steady, and walked to my room. When I returned, I carried 2 items, a cream-colored jewelry box and a sealed envelope. I placed them on the kitchen table, the bracelet inside the box, still untouched. The envelope, a notarized document transferring my share of the house. Signed, dated, final. "This," I said, tapping the box, "is the gift you tossed." Then I tapped the envelope. "And this is what you always wanted. The house, no strings, no me." Vera stepped back, her mouth open. "I'm giving it to you," I added, "but I'm taking something with me." Lennox finally asked, "What?" "My story." I left the table and went to the hallway closet. My suitcase was already packed. I wheeled it slowly down the hall, the rubber wheels creaking against the tile. I stopped by the doorway to Micah's room. He looked up from his tablet. "Grandma?" I walked in and knelt beside his bed. "I'm going to stay somewhere else for a little while, sweetheart, but I'll see you again." He hugged me tighter than I expected. "You promise?" I smiled. "I promise." When I stepped into the foyer, Lennox was waiting, hands stuffed in his pockets, face unreadable. He looked like a man standing at a cliff edge, but afraid to jump. "Mom," he started. I held up a hand. "Don't rewrite me. Just remember me." Then I opened the door and walked out, suitcase trailing behind me, its wheels scraping against concrete like punctuation marks on a sentence I finally finished. They took the house, the credit, the celebration, but I kept the truth. And that's the story people will remember. 2 months after I walked out of that house, my world had shrunk to fit inside a 1-bedroom apartment in Houston. The walls were plain, the air quieter than I was used to, and the view overlooked a parking lot dotted with dusty sedans. But the space was mine. I decorated with what I brought. An old lamp, 2 photos, a ceramic bowl Lennox made in 3rd grade. Not because I clung to the past, but because memory, when owned fully, becomes armor. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I taught a small class at the community center. Women like me, gray-haired, underestimated, sat in folding chairs and learned how to read contracts, write wills, and say no with confidence. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. I was building something that had nothing to do with being someone's mother or wife. Just me. Vera hadn't posted online in weeks. The family chat had gone mostly silent, except for the occasional recipe or meme from one of her cousins. Then slowly, one by one, messages trickled into my inbox. Private. Cautious. "I'm sorry, Marlene. We didn't know. We should have seen it earlier. I always wondered why you weren't in the pictures." I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't need apologies wrapped in whispers. But I saved them. Every word. On a Thursday afternoon, just before my class, I heard a knock at my door. I knew it was Lennox before I opened it. He stood alone. No Vera, no explanations rehearsed. He looked older than I remembered. Tired in the way guilt makes you tired. "I didn't come to fix anything," he said. Micah keeps asking about you." I let him in. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, like 2 people waiting for a bus going in different directions. "He says you left without saying goodbye." I nodded, because saying goodbye would have sounded too much like asking for permission. He swallowed hard. "He doesn't understand why." "You'll have to tell him," I said, "or one day he'll stop asking." We sat in the silence that followed. It wasn't angry, just worn. "I'm not here to blame you, Lennox," I added. "I know how people like Vera operate. They don't scream or break things. They convince you to shrink the people who raised you until they don't fit the frame anymore." He looked down at his hands. "She's gone," he said quietly. I didn't ask where or why. "She said I was too attached to the past," he added. "Maybe she was right." "No," I said. "She was just afraid of a past she couldn't control." He asked if I'd ever come back to the house. I smiled, soft but firm. "No, that house was built with my hands, but it belongs to my history now. I live forward." I offered him tea, and we talked for 20 more minutes. About Micah's reading level, the stray cat that adopted his porch, the weather. When he left, I didn't cry. I returned to my desk, gathered my notes for class, and walked out into the late afternoon sun with purpose in my steps. They had taken many things: space, voice, acknowledgement. But they never took my story, and I had chosen to tell it my way. I left their house behind, but not my dignity. And maybe, just maybe, they'll learn that silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it's a beginning. Life doesn't always give us a dramatic ending or a perfect apology, but it will give us choices. And what we choose to accept, what we choose to walk away from, defines the legacy we leave behind. I learned that being silent doesn't mean I was weak. It meant I was waiting for the moment my voice would matter most. And when that moment came, I didn't shout, I stood. Firm. Still. Unmoved. To anyone watching this who's ever felt erased, replaced, or unheard, know this: your worth is not dependent on their memory of you. It lives in how you remember yourself. So let me ask you, have you ever walked away not out of defeat, but out of dignity? What did it teach you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and share your own journey. And if this story touched you in any way, type 1 in the comments, or let me know what city you're watching from. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss more stories that speak to the heart. Your story matters too, and we'll be here to tell it.